Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the next, our Connectional Conversations. We are looking, the chat is already up and running pretty hot this morning, where everyone is from. And so it looks like we have people already from many of our annual conferences. We've got Lexington, Kentucky. Hi, Simon. Looks like Simon is joining us from Africa. We have Doc on with us. We have Nebraska. We've got the Philippines. We've got Florida, the Northeast Conference in Houston with their humid weather. And we are just, looks like we are at 81 current folks join us, and they will just, that number looks like it's just continuing to go up. So, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us. We are just so grateful that you took the time to join us for this conversation this morning. I am Diane Burnett, the Executive Director of Communications for the Global Methodist Church. I am actually usually stationed out of the West Plains Conference, Lubbock, Texas, but today I'm joining you from Virginia. Our communications team has a team retreat, and so we are gathered together here in Virginia. So I am on a different time zone than usual, but excited to be joining all of you with our petition secretary, Lamar Oliver. So Lamar has been technically in this role. He was served as petition secretary and assistant secretary, right, to Tom Lambrecht of the General Conference secretary. And he helped us through the 2024 convening General Conference and is continuing to do his good work for our 2026 General Conference that will be held in Johannesburg, South Africa. And so a big part of General Conference is everybody's favorite topic, right, Lamar? Petitions.
Oh
And so
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so we wanted to go ahead and get a head start on just helping lay out that process for all of you, what that looks like. And just Lamar share some of the work, how you can submit those, what it takes to be a valid petition, all of those things that you guys, I'm sure, are the burning questions that you are just dying to hear. And so we will be turning that over to Lamar for him to just share all the hard work that he has been working on with members of our team to get that process ready for you. But before we do that, Lamar, could you do us a favor and just say a prayer over our conversation today?
Indeed. Thank you, Diane. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you so much for the privilege and the honor of being part of your church. We thank you for those men and women that you have called to serve as part of our General Conference for 2026. As we gather today, Lord, may you anoint this time with your Spirit so that it may not be our work, but your will that is done in our conversation today and in all of the rest of the petition process leading up to 2026's General Conference. Lord, we offer this in the name of Jesus Christ by the power of the Holy Spirit, to the glory of God the Father. Amen.
Amen. So before we get started, I would like to just cover a couple of housekeeping um, housekeeping. What's the right word? Just a couple of things to note. We are monitoring the chat. And so we have Kristen, who is the communications manager, actually sitting next to me right now on her laptop. And she is actually working behind the scenes and helping us stay on topic and not on point with all of the questions that you guys asked. So feel free to ask those in the chat. We also have the questions that were submitted during your registration that we will reference. I am pretty confident Lamar is going to cover majority of these during his presentation naturally. However, we want to make sure that we will get those questions asked. After Lamar's presentation, we will have some time. We've allotted plenty of time for Q&A. So as questions come up during his presentation, we will definitely make sure that we have time to answer those. As the last Connectional Conversations, are actually the one that we had with Tom, and it was a couple weeks ago, we talked about General Conference. We do plan on providing this recording out to the church. It will be on our General Conference website, thebeautyofholiness2026.org. We also will be dubbing this in four of our other official languages of the Global Methodist Church: Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Korean. So this information will be in those languages and available to them. We will also then take the transcript and we will have it sent off for Kiswahili for those friends that need that language as well. And so it is just part of what we're doing to make sure that our global church are all getting the same information and all equipped as they enter this petition process. Right now, this format that we're using a software called Riverside. There is not a built-in translation at the moment. However, if you need that, you can do so using a plugin on your actual laptop if needed through Google. But we apologize for that. We're working on getting those things. Hopefully one day being a full offering, but right now that is where we stand. And so, Lamar, is there any other housekeeping tips that you want us to cover before we jump in?
No, not at all, Diane. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Lamar, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, first, I want to say thank you to all of you who have expressed an interest in the petitions process. It is a joy to get to see what's on the minds of the people around the world as they ask questions, as they get ready to submit petitions. And this morning, I just want to, as Diane referred to, we've had a lot of questions come in beforehand. I just want to give y'all maybe a little bit of a 30,000 foot view of what is going on with the petitions process, and then we're going to dive back into the questions later. First thing I want to talk about is the petitions timeline. Starting today, and this will be more next week, but today is the launching of our petitions page at our General Conference website and then slash petitions. And I want to encourage you that between now and the end of General Conference, that's going to be your clearinghouse for all things petition, is that website. Our petition timeline today, we're unveiling the petitions page. Next week, we're going to be posting training videos and other things to help you get used to the process. We want to give you all that background information. January 5th, 2026 is when the petition portal will open, and we will be collecting petitions from January 5th, 2026 until May 1st, 2026. Had some questions about the petitions process. Just as a background, the petitions process is actually covered in paragraph 706 of the 2024 Book of Doctrines and Disciplines. And we also have our plan of organization, which has just been tweaked by our General Conference Commission, and we'll be posting that information either later today or early next week. And then one of the questions that we get a lot is who can petition the General Conference? Individual members, whether clergy or lay of the Global Methodist Church, are able to petition the General Conference. You do not have to have your church approval. You do not have to have your annual conference approval. Any individual, clergy or lay, who is a member of the Global Methodist Church has the right to petition the General Conference. And we'll get in all those details will be part of our training materials that we release next week. But not only can individuals within the GMC, but local churches can petition the General Conference. It can be, there are certain churches that have certain things that they want to be considered by the general church. And normally that's done through the church council, and it's a way for churches to have their voice heard. And then official church committees, commissions, and groups, whether at the annual conference or general conference level, have standing to petition the General Conference. Now, that is official church committees and commissions and conferences. There are a lot of informal networks that are out there that are not official bodies, that are not referenced in the Book of Discipline. In those situations, there will be individuals, whether it's an ad hoc group or whatever, there will be only groups that are official part of the GMC can petition. And then, of course, annual conferences, meeting and plenary session can petition the General Conference. And sometimes I get asked, what is the role of the petition secretary? And I want to just hit a couple of things that I've heard 24 and 25 and heading into 26. One of the questions I get is, will this or that petition be considered? Will it be passed? And I'm just going to tell you, I have no idea. Ours is about process, not about outcome. That is strictly, ultimately up to the plenary body of the General Conference. And we have no control over what is submitted. Some of the questions that were submitted as part of this call. There were questions about, well, will this be considered or this be considered? And the answer is that's up to you. If you feel passionate enough about an issue that you want it to be considered, submit a petition. All we do is we validate petitions and verify the substantiation, and then they are referred to the appropriate legislative committees. The plenary session of the General Conference will be the one that ultimately decides the disposition of each petition. I also get asked, what topics can petitions cover? Revisions or additions to the Book of Doctrines and Discipline and the Judicial Practice and Procedures. There are also non-disciplinary petitions, resolutions, and you'll see some references to the disciplinary paragraphs on that in the training materials. One thing about petitions is, for the most part, they require a majority vote, but resolutions require a 75% supermajority vote of the plenary session. One big change from 2024, and I'll get to this later, is there's no limits this time. 2024, we had a limited agenda given the unique nature of our convening conference, where there were only certain parts of the Book of Discipline that were up for consideration. But this time, the whole thing is open. But one thing to remember is petitions can refer only to one paragraph, except in the most unique of situations. Another question that has come in is, what happens to a petition? Okay, let's say, Lamar, go to our website, submit a petition. What happens? Well, first thing is, I will fully vet the petition. I will ensure that all the requirements have been met. And then, of course, my work is subject to review by the references committee at the end of the process. We also, if you're submitting a petition as an individual, you have to have 10 co-signers who are members of the Global Methodist Church. And part of our process is we verify all 10 signatures. We verify all the co-signers, so that way we keep it above board. And if it's a committee, a group, or an annual conference, there either has to be the minutes of the meeting where this petition was considered, or there has to be a letter from the chair or secretary. And then after the verification and validation process, the petition is assigned to a legislative committee, and you can see more about that in our plan of organization. And basically, it is by discipline section where the petitions go mostly. But the final disposition of all petitions will be handled by the plenary session. Petition verification and validation are an ongoing process. Once petitions are verified and validated, they will be sent for petition. One change that we are seeing for 2026 is, instead of batching all the petitions at the end, we're going to be sending our petitions out weekly for translation to help with the flow on the back end. And also, one other question we've gotten is, when will petitions be released? And all petitions will be released at one time on July 1st, 2026. As part of the pre-conference report. We won't release them as we go, because that's a matter of fairness for all petitioners. And so we put it all together at once at the very end of the process. How are petitions submitted? Petitions may be submitted solely through the portal found on the General Conference website. And I've already gotten some questions about, well, what happens if I don't have reliable internet access, or I don't have any access at all? And we're asking those who face that situation, get in touch with your conference office. Every conference office that we have around the world has reliable internet access. And so you can work through your your annual conference office to help make that happen. Given the global nature of our body and given our resources, as we are not top heavy, we don't have the bandwidth to do a whole lot other than the straight up online process. We understand, appreciate, and are responsive to those for whom the online only may be a challenge. And that's why we're going to ask you to work with your conference offices as needed on that front. Another thing, I've already referred to 2024. 2024, we had deferred petitions. Those petitions that were not part of the limited agenda as part of our plan of organization were automatically deferred to 2026. All deferred petitioners were contacted this fall and offered the opportunity to withdraw, because some of the petitions are no longer relevant because the topics that they were addressing either are gone or have been handled differently. And those petitions that needed only a change in paragraph number were updated because after 24, some of the stuff that was in the transitional book didn't make it to the final copy. And then there was some stuff added before our by the General Conference as part of our Book of Discipline. And so those petitions that needed only a change to the paragraph number were updated. But if there was any change at all to the body of the petition, we've asked those petitioners to resubmit so that that way everything starts clean, because the petitions that were validated and verified in 2024, it wouldn't have been fair to let people make changes without blowing it by all their co-signers or the committees that approved these things. And so that is why that little wrinkle was added. Speaking of changes from 2024, we have 4 months this time instead of 3 weeks. We have 4 months to submit petitions. And that's really cool because I think it's going to be fun to see how people work through the process, and it will also make things more efficient on our end. Another change from 2024 we've already referred to is that the entirety of the Book of Doctrines and Discipline and the entirety of the Judicial Practice and Procedures is up for consideration. And one thing that we heard from our delegates that we are going to hit hard this time is that our pre-conference petitions report will be organized by legislative committee, not numerically. And for those of you that aren't there, it may not be as big a deal, but we're going to line up our petitions report by legislative committee and then by paragraph. So when committees are dealing with, say, all 7 petitions dealing with paragraph 703, they'll have those petitions right back and forth, and we'll save some of the back and forth that people struggled with having to go into their pre-conference report. Now, what's the same from 2024? Just some highlights. Pre-conference report will be there will be a fully navigable PDF with multiple indexes, just as in 24, to help make it easier for those of you who much prefer dealing with electronic stuff. And our aim, just as we did in 2024, one of the things that we really got a lot of positive feedback about was that our aim is for consistent pagination across all languages. So whether you're holding the English translation of the pre-conference report or the Portuguese or Portuguese translation of the pre-conference petition report, if you go to page 25, it's going to be the same thing on both sides. The same thing in 24 is all co-signers for individual petitions will be verified, and all substantiation docs for groups will be verified. One final thing that I will tell you before we get into our questions from Diane is that understanding that there are many different learning styles in the Global Methodist Church, folks, you will see coming online on our petitions page in the next week or so. We will have a detailed 9-page document that lays out text-wise how to go through the petition portal. We'll also have, as part of that packet, a flow chart for those of you who are more visual learners that will take you step by step through how to submit a petition. And then finally, we also know there are those who like to have somebody, for lack of a better term, hold their hand. And so we are cutting some videos to walk you through the process with us. I will be going through the submission process, and I'll be recording a screenshot video, so you literally will see how each box is filled out and in what order. And our hope is, by doing the instructions in those 3 ways, the detailed text, the overview of flowchart, and the detailed hand holding, we will make this process as user-friendly and as helpful as possible.
All right. Well, thank you, Lamar. That was great. We have a question that I think is a very great question that I'm sure several have, is that, could you maybe tell us a little bit about what that portal format looks like? Are people going to be submitting PDFs? Is it going to be like a jot form style? Could you kind of give them an idea about that?
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. It's one thing I did not mention from 2024. It will be strictly a jot form. We're not going to do any file uploading of doc files or PDF, because as well intentioned as that was, that caused us a lot of headaches on the back end because go back to what we were talking about with the formatting being the same across languages. By inserting everything via the JOT form, it will make it a lot easier for our back end technical crew to deal with that. And the only thing that we are taking via upload are the petition or the minutes or or minutes or letters dealing with group substantiation. But as far as each individual petition, and the rule of thumb is you'll be able to copy and paste it from whatever app you're using to construct your petition and put it in the text box. And there's a lot of detail that's in our video about how to do that process to make sure the strike throughs are in the right place and make sure the underlines are in the right place.
All right, great. Thanks, Lamar. So I want to jump in. Feel free to keep asking your questions via chat, but I wanted to make sure that I go through the questions that were submitted prior to the meeting so that we can touch on all of those. And so one of the first questions, Lamar, and I'm just going to ask these. I know you may have touched on some of these, but I think, sometimes questions can be asked a different way, that we answer a different way, and help for clarification. So
We're
will
here to help.
Right, absolutely. So will individuals submit petitions without discussing them with their annual conferences?
Yes, every individual has the right to petition general conference, and you don't have to ask anybody's permission. You just need to have 10 co-signers who are members of the GMC, and those 10 co-signers can be clergy or lay.
All right, great. And also then, can an individual submit a petition to the general conference, or does it have to go through their annual conference, which kind of is the same? So individuals, again, can submit.
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay. So how will the commission ensure that the denomination continues to safeguard global doctrinal standards without serving personal interest?
Again, that is one of those we have no control over that. That there is we do not have the authority in the petitions process to tell someone their petition can't be done because it doesn't meet this or that theological, philosophical threshold. You have the right as an individual or as a group in the GMC to petition the General Conference. And then at that point, the petition will go where it needs to go and be part of the process.
Great. All right. So let's say you receive a petition, right, from someone. How do you know and verify that they are a bona fide member of the GMC?
Great question. And one of the things that you will note in the form is that all petitioners must be members, all co-signers must be members of the GMC. And we will be reaching out to each individual co-signer. But at the end of the day, I do not have 100% lock sure it is going to be. There is a little bit of a level of trust there that those that we reach out to will be members of the Global Methodist Church, those that are co-signing.
All right. And so, just to help clarify so that we know, can you again just help say once again due dates, some of those key
Perfect.
dates and important dates for the petition process?
All right, January 5th is when the petition submission portal opens. And between now and January 5th, we're going to have a ton of materials. One other wrinkle that we're adding for 26 that we didn't have in 24 is whether you're submitting a petition as an individual, as a group, or from an annual conference. We actually have put together a checklist of things for you to have ready before you start the process. And so one of the reasons why we are opening up the petitions page today and filling it within the next week is so you will have time between now and January to start putting your strategy together. January 5th, petition submission portal opens. May 1st, the petition submission portal closes. Between May 1st and July 1st, I will meet with the references committee to make sure that all the assignments that were made for the petitions are approved by them, make sure that I didn't miss anything. We'll be having everything translated and compiled in a pre-conference report. Then the petitions report will be published along with the pre-conference report on July 1, 2026. And then once we're on site in Johannesburg, The legislative committees will deal with each petition, and then they will send their recommendations to the plenary session of the General Conference, who will then take final action on all reports of the legislative committee. And then after the General Conference is adjourned, Tom and I will work with others to make sure that the journal is perfected and make sure that the updated Book of Doctrines and Disciplines and the JPP are published according to church law.
Awesome, great. And then we've got some other questions that go to is that about the 10 co-signers, okay?
Yes.
Require actual signatures, or will digital signatures be allowed?
We are actually not going to take actual signatures. Everything has to be done digitally. You'll need to put in their first name, their last name, and a valid email address. And one thing when coming to co-signers, and I cannot emphasize this enough, in 2024, there were some petitions that did not make it because the email address for the co-signer wasn't correct and we couldn't get a hold of them. And one of the things you will notice in the individual submission portal is at the bottom, after you enter all 10 first and last names and all the email addresses, the petitioner will have to check a box that affirms that they have verified that these email addresses are accurate. We are anticipating a much higher volume of petitions than we had last time, and so we won't have the time to just go back and forth. So we're putting a lot of, for lack of a better term, we're putting a lot of the onus on the individual petitioners to make sure the co-signer information is correct.
Okay, great. And then can an annual conference consolidate all petitions from its members and submit them to you?
Uh, Annual conferences can only submit petitions that have been approved by their plenary session to be sent. Each petition can only deal with one paragraph. So there's no way to send a consolidated petition with all the paragraphs and all the changes you want. Each petition has to deal with only one paragraph, or if there are super tight relations between two paragraphs where changing one changes another. But there's no way to just send a mass body of petitions at once. Each petition, and somebody might say, why is that? Well, here's another reason. Not every petition deals with the same paragraph or even gets sent to the same legislative committee. And there's no way for us to be able to just separate out, say, one submission that has 30 different parts. That's why the church law set up for each petition deals with one paragraph.
All right, thank you. And, kind of on that note is, and I think you've mentioned it, but maybe just to help clarify again, is that how do you handle petitions that overlap?
How do I have petitions that overlap? I'm not quite sure exactly what that question means as far as overlap, but uh,
I'm reading that as maybe you've got multiple petitions that are covering the same paragraph, right? Maybe like the same topic.
okay,
How do you handle those?
all right. Each petition is to be handled by the legislative committee. However, there are times where, and I don't have the elegant language for this, there will be boilerplate petitions put out by groups saying, we want as many people as possible to submit this. We can't consolidate identical or nearly identical petitions into one and list the submitters that have done that. But that's going to be very rare because you have two people that see a paragraph that needs to be changed and they may want to have the same outcome, but maybe they want to have a different rationale, or maybe they want to handle this word or that just a little bit differently. And so we're going to err on the side of each petition getting consideration. And a lot of times what you'll see is you'll see legislative committees then try to do that work within themselves, to try to take the overall gist and just amend one petition. But as far as the petition submission process, my piece of advice would be just one at a time, and then we will work with the legislative chairs and others as needed to make sure that we have all the petitions handled fairly, equitably.
Great. And so, is there a limit on how many petitions an individual can submit?
Under church law, none. You can submit as many petitions as you want. There's no limit at all.
All right. And then, we had another question, looks like from Toby, that says, can we only submit 10 co-signers or can we submit more, like let's say 20 to 30, so that we can make sure that you get 10 people verified out of that so that we can show support for petition?
There are only 10 co-signer slots available in our form.
All right. I think that's good to know. And then,
There's a good. But let me tag on something else on that. One thing that I did not mention, but that you'll see in the petition training information is rationale will be only the only place for rationale is in the petition form itself, where you'll have the petition title, then the rationale. Any rationale and any cosigners added to the body of a petition will be stripped out. The body of the petition should deal only with what is being changed or what is being proposed. And because of that, last time, folks, one of the feedback we got was some concern about the limit on rationale. So we've actually increased the rationale section from 500 characters to 750 as a way to kind of mitigate the fact that we don't handle rationale within the body of a petition. So we decided a fair way to handle that was to increase by 50% the space for rationale. And another reason why is you would have people put one rationale in the rationale box, but then they would list a whole different rationale in the body of their petition. So we're going to strip all that out, and we're just going to stick with what is it that is being considered. What is it that is being asked to be considered by the General Conference?
great. And, we have a follow-up kind to that is what is the use of rationale if it's not published?
The rationale is published. It's just not published as part of the petition itself. There's a separate place in the petition submission process for the rationale to be entered. It's not that the rationale is not going to be published. It's going to be part of the whole thing. It's just in a different section than the actual body of the petition itself.
Gotcha. All right. And then also, so if we have some older folks in our church that do not have email addresses, how do we handle that? And so I'm going to answer part of that. Is that we would encourage them to work with their annual conference and their office to maybe get a solution. But I will say, we as a new global denomination have no choice but to really operate in a way that allows us to work virtually and globally. And part of what keeps us connected is email. And so in 2025, 2026, I think it's very important, even to our older population, as part of our connectionalism as a denomination, is to encourage email addresses. And so there are free platforms. There's Gmail, does Yahoo still exist? Whatever it may be, there are avenues for them to just sign up for an email. And really, I would encourage them to do so, not only just for the petition process, but to stay in I would say, in the loop of what's going on with their denomination. They can sign up for our Across the Globe newsletter. They can go to different, I would say, even their probably annual conference and their newsletter. How they get that information is through their email, and they can have it right at their fingertips. And so I would encourage them to find somebody to help set that email up and equip them so that they are able to then stay connected to some of those news and those resources. Lamar, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, but it's a great question. It's one that we've had to deal with. The main thing, if that is a problem, and I'm not going to say it's demographic. I don't think that's really fair to say it's about a demographic thing. It's about an internet access thing. But I'll say that if that is a challenge, drop me an email, petitions@globalmethodist.org, and I will work with you to make sure that we can get your petition verified.
Perfect. But they would also need an email to help you probably email you at that. So also, and Thank you, Chris from Great Lakes. Actually, put a link into some free email resources if you would like to share with your friends as well. So, we have a question that says, will any priority be given to certain petition in terms of order for consideration? For instance, will petitions submitted for the 2024 GC be considered before those submitted for 2026?
There will be no favoritism shown to anything. All these petitions will be treated the same and go through the process. The deferral from 24 was not about early access or priority. It was about understanding that there were petitions that needed to come forward that we weren't going to deal with in 2024. Along that line of thinking, I'll also say that some people asked me in 24 and in 26. One of the great joys of being the petition secretary is you get to see where the thinking is in the denomination. You get to see what's on the mind of the Global Methodist as a whole going into the next General Conference. And one of the things about the deferred petitions that I really enjoyed from last time was seeing where people were coming from and what they felt needed to be addressed. Because at the end of the day, the petition submissions reflect the thinking of the denomination as a whole. And as one who loves history and loves church history, what I love is that no matter what happens to a petition, whether it is passed, whether it is not passed, whether it's validated, not valid, whatever it is, those who are coming along after us 50, 60 years from now will be able to look at the petition record and say, oh, so this is what was on their mind. And so, no, we don't give favoritism to an order of preference. We put it all in the hopper at once. But I just wanted to add that little bit of flavor to the background to help you understand the bigger picture of what's going on with the petition process.
Great. And then the rationale section is limited to 750 words.
Characters.
Characters. Is there a word limit for the body of the petition?
None at all. None at all.
We just wanted a follow up that says, we all know that emails often go to spam trash folders. Is there a backup contact method if 8 to 9 co-signers respond, but one doesn't? What I will also say is, we will take this. I feel like there's a lot of concern and questions about verifying of co-signers. And so we hear that and know that, we will try to make sure, and maybe that's something also to let your co-signers know when they are signing that, hey, this is going to need to be verified. And so in that process, be expecting an email and also asking them to just make sure that they check their spam and trash and whatnot. I'm speaking on behalf of Lamar, but I know he spends countless hours and times verifying all of this and really working through, and he will do everything in his power to make sure your co-signers are verified. And so I think we just got to do our part on the front end as well to just say, hey, check all your folders, know that this is coming once it's submitted, to kind of help with some of that. Anything to add to that, Lamar?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Number one, I will constantly be in touch with, as I was at 24, with petitioners saying, hey, I've heard from these co-signers. I haven't heard from this one. Again, putting the onus on the petitioner to be our partner with that. But the other thing about co-signers that is interesting that came about 2024 is there are some of our friends in the Global Methodist Church that come out of denominational traditions where maybe not all the tenets of church law were followed as they should have been. And part of our philosophy is if we're going to require 10 co-signers, then dadgummit, we owe it to the people of the church to uphold church law. If you're going to take the time to have your petition considered by 10 friends who will sign on and say, here we go, we're on board with this, it's incumbent upon us to uphold our own church law, especially given some of the ways in which people have come out of traditions where that wasn't done. This is a matter not just of checking the boxes, but it's about us living out our calling as Global Methodists to adhere to the rules which we have agreed to abide by together.
All right. Well, thank you, Lamar. And, I just want to take a moment of privilege in this space to say, one, thank you, Lamar, for all your work that you do for this process. And I also want to thank a couple people who have worked behind the scenes to get the portal up and ready. We know that our situation has been, it's a little bit unique, and it's not really something you can just go and check out at Amazon. We need this petition portal. And so Rhonda Bourgeois out of the Trinity Conference, as well as Jeremy, who was on staff with us at the GMC, have worked with Lamar to build and create this portal for us that allows our all of you and our members to submit their thoughtful petitions and to just help through our process, and also to be sensitive to our needs of really our different demographics and the global needs of our denomination. And so I just wanted to take a moment of privilege and just tell all of them thank you so much for the work that you have done to help, and you continue to do, to help with this process, to help with the voices of our denomination have an avenue to submit those petitions and concerns or whatever it may be. We are so grateful for all of you and the giftings that the Lord has blessed you with, and our ability to be able to use those for the good of our church. So thank you all so very much. And we want to thank all of you again for joining us. We know what an important process this is for all of you, and we are so grateful. These questions were great. We'll continue to, we have put the petition email in the chat. So if you continue to have other questions or whatnot, feel free to send those our way. We know one of the big questions that always come out of these is, when can we expect for the recording to be available? And so help us spread the word. We will get it done and out as soon as we can, and we'll email this out. It takes a little bit for our software to process. So I am going to be safe and say by early next week. I'm not going to set us up to say you will have it in 10 minutes, but we will aim for early next week. And then the translations and the dubbing, those take a little bit longer. And so as those become available, we release those, and we will put them on our General Conference website, beautyofholiness2026.org. And so again, thank you all so much for taking a moment to join us. Lamar, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. We're looking forward to all the resources and videos that you have already put together to walk us through this process. And we just hope everybody, as we enter this Advent, or we're in Advent, right? This Advent season, that we are just praying and hoping all of the blessings upon all of you. And thank you again just for being members of the Global Methodist Church. So everybody, have a great day.